started?
Sure.
Call the Planning, Environment, and Development Committee meeting of February 6th to order. Go roll call. John?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Carolyn?
Here.
Carl? Present. Jim?
Here.
And Lou Ness is calling in. Could we have a motion to allow Lou Ness to join? Moved by Mr. Gadamuller, seconded by Carolyn Campbell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, welcome, Lou.
Thank you.
I got your name tag right in front of me, so if you vote on anything, I won't forget you. I'll try.
Thanks, Larry.
I'll try. Okay, number 2, go to minutes approval. Minutes for the committee meeting of January 8th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Carl, seconded by Joe. Any discussion regarding the minutes from the January 8th meeting? No discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor to pass the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We'll move on to public comment. Scott?
One public comment, Mr. Vanderspool.
I see you're getting that. Mr. Vanderspool, I think you know the situation here. Please introduce yourself, and then we have 3 minutes for your comments.
Good morning. My name is Jan Vanderspool. You've seen me probably, at your opinion, too many times. I live at 8708 Bull Run Trail, part of Bull Run Estates that extends from the southeast corner of Mason Hill and Country Club eastward. I've been here advocating along with others for assistance to try and collect acreage for spongy moth spraying to make it affordable. My 3-acre lot individually is not an affordable situation. The county has collected trapping data and hotspot data. And again, I'm here to request that you continue the process of helping us out for hotspot spraying. I don't see the situation as a right or wrong or a yes or no between the Illinois Department of Agriculture that is spraying for hotspots and the McHenry County Conservation District. I also wish that we could get over that hump up there. Some seems to be some kind of hump there. We need help. It's going to be the 3rd year. Trees have been chopped down in my neighborhood. I discussed that. Yeah, maybe there was some life in them, but when the crown is killed off and you got a sprout here and a sprout there, okay, the tree is alive, but it's really not useful. So I beg of you to continue the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No other public comment. We'll move on to members' comments. Any members have comments this morning? Everybody's pretty content this morning, apparently. Okay, we can move on to new business then. Our new business, 5.1, would be to interview for the Historic Preservation Commission Chairperson seat, which I believe Peter Gussie is here.
Yes, sir.
Peter, would you please step up in front so that you get caught on the microphones that are somewhere out there in the cloud?
Good morning.
Morning. Welcome.
Sit down, relax.
Yeah, so let's sit down, please sit down, relax, and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want this position of authority.
My name is Peter Gussie. I have lived out in McHenry County for about 46 years. I've always had a real appreciation and love of history. I see a lot of properties going unprotected, a lot of it because the residents don't know that there's aid out there to help them to restore some of these historic buildings. I've sat on the HPC here now for a little over a year. I've been part of the W.A. McConnell Foundation, which is a local historical society out of the Richmond-Burton Township areas for a couple of years now. Was one of the founding members there. I've got a pretty good working relationship with a lot of the other historical groups in the county. And I think all that combined, I could do a good job as chair for this commission.
Okay, thank you. Does any of the committee members have any questions for Mr. Gussie? Go ahead, Carl.
In your resume, you had mentioned that you had several goals that you wanted to accomplish. Can you kind of elaborate on,
Yeah.
you know, your top 3 hitters that you'd like to see get going?
Yeah, one of course is I'd like to see the number of, you know, historic properties that are, you know, out there, an increase in the landmarking, you know, to, you know, bring some publicity to these properties, get people to appreciate things more. But as part of the commission, I think one of the biggest things we could do right now is work with all the other small historic groups out there, get them together, combine efforts to, you know, reach out to these property owners to do that. You know, these small groups that are spread out all over are the ones that have, you know, the face-to-face communication with the locals in their areas. They're also in a position right now where a lot of their members are aging out. They're having a hard time getting new members in, part of it because of people not knowing about them. By getting everybody together, we can work on kind of promoting them, maybe getting them some fresh blood, and then working together on overall goals.
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else? So, remind me, the chairmanship comes due every 5 years, 6 years or 4 years? Is it 6 or 4?
I believe it's a 1 year.
1 year?
Yeah.
Okay. But you can't be chairman 2 years in a row, or am I getting this mixed up with some other commission?
You can, there's no limitation.
Oh, there's no
on the
limitation,
term.
okay.
You're confusing it with Conservation District.
Oh, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of Conservation District people here. You're right, Joe. Okay. So, any other questions? I don't have anything. I went through your resume. It's pretty thorough. I appreciate you stepping forward to take this position. If it's I guess we're going to discuss this in the next.
I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yeah, and thanks for doing, and thank you for stepping up. I mean, we did interview you a year ago, right? So a lot of this is familiar, so thank you again for
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, 5.2. Deliberation and selection for a chairperson. Okay, historical. Mr. Godemauer moves to approve Peter Gussie, and Carl seconds it. Discussion. I think it's great that he stepped forward. I really like the idea that when he mentions combining the efforts of all the smaller historical groups and getting everybody going in the same direction. I think it makes common sense to me. Anybody else have anything on it?
Yep, I would agree. I would agree with that.
Okay. Nothing else on it? We'll go to vote. Jim?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
Forgot Lou.
Lou?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you, Lou.
yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So Mr. Gussie will be moved forward as a recommendation to the County Board Chairman for Chairperson of the Historic Preservation Commission. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gussie, and that will go to the chairman. And we're going to move on to the presentations then. And we have a drain tile mapping project, and I think we're looking for Nicole. Hello, good morning, and Scott.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll tee this up for Nicole and we'll turn it over to her. But your strategic plan identified the need to really take a look at our drainage tile systems and identify where those tiles are, and tasked the county with collecting all that information, compiling it, and putting it into some sort of database. And with that strategic plan direction, we worked with Nicole from GIS and her team, as well as our partners in DOT, to start to pull in all the documents the county has internally And then we've done some outreach with our drainage district partners to compile this information. I'll tell you, it's a Herculean task, and Nicole and her team have been working on this for the better part of, I don't know, would you say 4 or 5 months, just pulling together just various pieces of information, stitching it together, and it is a work in progress. We're still at the very beginning stages. You'll see how far it's come, but there's so much more to do because there's so much information out there that needs to be found and compiled. And with that, before I turn it over to Nicole, I'll turn it over to the committee, or ask the committee and ask our community, if you know of drainage tile documentation or information, please let us know so we can grab that information, make sure it's reflected into our system once we can verify it. So with that, buckle up, because this is going to be a great presentation.
I told Scott, they're slapping the table.
That's right. And also introduce Ernest Vargas with DOT, very passionate about a lot of things in McHenry County, including and especially drainage tile systems. So with that, Nicole, Ernest,
Okay,
thank you.
if you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt a little bit. If you two would introduce yourself, Mr. Varga, how long you been with DOT? Nicole, I know you've been with the Director of GIS for a long time, but I don't think a lot of these people have crossed paths with you as much as maybe I have with you over the years, not with Mr. Varga. So go ahead, Nicole, if you want to go first. Just.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Gattuso. I'm the Director of GIS. I've been with McHenry County for 20 years.
My name is Ernest Varga. I've been with McHenry County for 15 and a half years. Our family first bought property in McHenry County in 1954, and we've had to deal with drain tiles ourselves. I did over 20 years on the private side. I had to deal with drain tiles in regards to developments and properties. And when I was brought on board at the McHenry County Division of Transportation, we still have to deal with drain tiles in the form of the road and the bridge projects. And so I'm tasked with that many a times.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead then.
So what we have here is our interactive map that we collected a lot of information from all different sources, and our department worked closely with Ernest and Planning and Development to compile this different information, and we're going to go through it today. Again, it's a work in progress, but to start it off, what you're seeing on the map is a layer of all the districts, the drainage districts. The green are the active districts, and we're currently working with the active districts to get more information. Some of the drainage districts have historic documents that we don't have or have not been recorded but have gone through the courts. And so we're working with them and the county clerk office to update these maps. So the boundaries that you're seeing today for the active drainage districts are going to change a little bit as we get those documents. So to zoom in a little bit, so this one is the Greenwood Drainage District 1. And the documents that we have, you can find, there's a PDF that you can open up, and there's a lot of data here, but right here is one of the historic maps. Did you want to expand on that?
Okay, a little bit so everybody kind of has a notion. Even in the 1800s, drain tiles were being put in McHenry County. However, they were done on a random basis. And some farmers had them, some cooperated, some didn't. It was actually 1913 when DOT was formed by the Tice Act down at Springfield that someone in their infinite wisdom on the county board said, wait a minute, we now have a county engineer, let's do something. So what the county engineer did is he went out as one of his first tasks to try to plot out what was there. Not only where drain tiles were, but where break lines were for drainage and where water flowed. Based on that, he then went forth and started putting together the districts. Now we have 43 districts that were established at that time. At any one time, all of them could be active if the board so deemed it appropriate. Currently, we do not have all of them active. Some have gone inactive even since the 1990s. Crystal Lake used to have a very active one as well. By the same token, as he plotted and found what was there and established drainage districts, they then tried to say, okay, where would it be best to have major laterals? So what you're seeing a map of is major laterals. They documented where it went across the various sections of a given area. They also documented size of pipe so that someone knew, so if in the future someone wanted to drain another area, they could tap into these very same elements. These are still in place. Many of the ones that were put in from the 1900s on were clay tile. Now, the difficulty with clay tile is sometimes they start to go into a falter mode. They're either broken up, the machinery is much larger than it was when they were established. The reason this one was kind of chosen, we're actually down in this area, right now, where it's where you're sitting. That bend or kink is Route 47 as you head north toward Charles Road. So that you can have some idea, this area in here is where Justice Hill subdivision is. And Justice Hill, we also included that plat as part of it, only because Justice Hill even documented where one of the tiles went through the subdivision. And as you drive on Route 47 and you see the Justice Hill sign, you'll see a pond. What they did is they broke it in order to create an open water basin. The subdivision that is off to our east here, also fronting on Ware Road, is also, those ponds you see are broken field tiles. They were broken intentionally to create an aesthetic image. If you also look, as you're driving on 47 due north of this building, you'll see a large patch in the middle of a farm field, and it looks like wet growth, mostly cattails, what in days of old would have been called marshes, and that is a field tile system that's broken from a time gone by, and it has not been repaired. So there are field tiles. We also tapped into the same field tile system as we did the Charles Raffle Roundabout. All of that is contained on this image. Now, this is not this district is combined with another one above it because Greenwood has a couple of components to it. We went back and accumulated all the 43 districts. Based on what we could find, we then plotted where they were, so those images that Nicole showed, the images in colored polygons, they're based on these actual maps, where they have the border and boundary, and each one was plotted. Now, right now, Farm Bureau is also working. They're seeing a need to get all of this back online. So when you saw the yellow or pending one, it is one that the Farm District is working with. And Farm Bureau, excuse me. And they would love to see more of them come online. The other thing that these are very valuable for, even as solar farms are now a big deal that everybody can see, so are developments, obviously. The solar farms are needing this data because when they approach a farmer who may have 40 or 80 acres, they'd rather not go busting up field tiles. They'd rather stay where it isn't. We also were able to get participation on the part of Conservation District. They were very kind. They have accumulated many parcels of land, as we all know, that at one time were natural wetlands, but were field tile. And in their work, they have done two things. In some cases, they have literally broken the tiles with an intention of restoring a wetland, the Lost Valley wetland of Glacial Park. Very nicely done. However, what they've also done is they've restored some of the tiles. So you may see areas where you'll see the 4x8 Conservation District sign, this land being preserved for the future, but you may see agricultural land behind it. They have that kind of in a holding pattern because they need dollars and personnel and everything else. But in those cases, they've taken many of those fields. These are where they've been broken up. There's broken and repaired. They have actually repaired tiles. So if anyone here is not so pro break tiles, they do both. Not just one, but both. Whenever we take on any project, we also have to look into the field tiling system, and we have a phenomenal document in the form of ordinance, in the form of our stormwater ordinance, enforced by McHenry County Planning and Development. Now, in theory, any development, including roads and bridges, which there would almost be an inclination to say, well, aren't those already there? Shouldn't we work with them? Yes, but we too have to do field tile studies. So the studies, and the planning and development was kind enough to provide a few, anytime a study is called for, they actually get a piece of documentation. Now, Huddleston McBride is a very large firm that works it. And again, Nicole and her team have PDF'd all the information. And what you see is this is a specific tract. This piece has field tiling. This was being done for a purpose of a solar farm, and the solar farm went to this end. They didn't want to have to deal with all this. What is done is a looking at, similar to what I do when I take on any of the projects that DOT has done, an assumption like, where would we assume there might be tiles is created, and then they actually go out and do slit excavations to determine, is there a tile, isn't there a tile? And then what's it made of, what's its size, how deep? This is very valuable information. Now, planning and development was kind enough to grab a few for us. By saying grab a few, the ordinance goes back to, help me Adam, 2004? 2004. And I participated on the private side as well as on the county side. And each time one of these is done, it would form part of a quilt. So you'd have one here, maybe one further south, one off to the west. Well, when this parcel comes up, you have a great deal of data. You know what's going on up here. You know what's going on down here. So you have some idea. You have the older maps that were created back in the early 1900s. We also were kind enough, through the effort of Nicole and her team, they have the historic information. Now, we tried to pull what we could. The earliest photographs are 1939, aerials. So we have the 39, 54, and 67. I think those are the 3 years. I'm trying to recall. Yeah, 39. Now, even as you look at those, if you look at those three, and then you can kind of go toward Google, they also put a current one, you'll see different pieces of information kind of show up. So a farm field might not grow quite right, or you might see a little bit of discoloration. The maps that Nicole has up right now, these are those 1913 maps. What the county engineer did is he went out and took the best data he could, hydrologic atlases of the time. Those contour grids are 10-foot marks. Then what he did is, if he knew of a tile, or he found out about a tile, he would put a blue line and mark tile. If there was simple drainage, he would put in arrows showing where it goes, but he does have tiles. And the red lines are break. A break point is, if I'm a drop of water and I fall here, I'm going one way or the other. So I have to make a choice. And so these maps were what he utilized in order to create the drainage district maps. So all of that data and information is there, and the point is, not only do we have the historic, which is of value in the form of these, as well as the historic aerials, we have more current information from McHenry County Conservation District, McHenry County Planning and Development, and that quilt that would be created by those drain tile studies would be even more as we go backwards and forwards, because we have to go all the way from 2004 to today, and then we have to go from today onward. And so the quilt will become more and more. The other points, these yellow dots, McHenry County Division of Transportation, we took that project on. We went through a series of, I think there were a total of, must have been 35 aerials. And as we looked at them, we noted spots where we believe there could be a field tile break. And it's done simply by observation of multiple aerials on an area. And we did it for the whole county. So when you see these yellow, we kiddingly call them measles, that's our doing saying, hey, be on guard. Now you may say, well, of what value is that? Why did you guys do that? Well, we're not only tasked with county highways and bridges, we're also tasked with township bridges. And so we have to kind of get a feel. So this was an overall project that we worked on, which has also been brought into the information. Now, as the quilt becomes more and more, as more data is found, Nicole's going to relate when we had the public hearing last Monday, a week ago yesterday, more data was already discovered. And so that has already been started to be worked in on. Now you may say, well, of what value? It has value to the development of land in McHenry County. It has value to the agricultural element of McHenry County. It also has value, as I said, to the solar farms of McHenry County. It has value to the transportation network of McHenry County. So this is going to be, I mean, it is already, but is going to be a very valuable tool. And to show you light years of difference, when I started back in 2008, there was nothing. I mean, nothing was really put together. So So I literally took one of our maps that we had at the time, and I started scratching on, well, where are those drainage districts? Where are they hiding? So we had the drainage districts. Then I was like, okay, let me start looking, what do I see and know? I don't know if any of you have ever taken the time, but as you're even driving, you will note and see that there's excavation going on. Now's a great time of the year to see it. And what it is somebody repairing a field tile. Now, they may be doing it on their own. They may be doing it with the authority of a district. And all these little marks, the black marks you saw, those are where I would note a date and a rough field. Say, oh, field tile work fit. And it has actually come to help when we got to a bridge 10 years later, or 15 years later, that's very near there. I was like, wait a minute, there's a field tile out there. I've even gone, and as stupid as it may sound, and people may laugh, I still know how to witch, so I still go out and actually witch in the field. So the tool that Nicole and her team have put
You gotta explain that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think I know what we're talking about.
Well, witching, the old timers used to do it with willow forks. I do it more with brass rods.
Okay.
But in essence, you can detect where there is something below the surface. Usually it's water. However, you can detect disruptions in most of it. I have a totally different theory than the old timers with water. I personally believe when the glaciers pass through this area, they align the electrons. And when man comes through and rips it, we destroy that electron field. So when you're walking with the brass rod and it's all good and fun and all of a sudden goes, it's like, wait a second, what happened? Someone dug. So, I mean, you can also witch for utilities too, as odd as it sounds. So witching is possible. But part of this is done through a witching process. It's done literally brass rods. People don't, I mean, you can still do it with a willow if you want to play, but brass rods are the way most do. There's also the element switch that's like an old telescopic antenna, and there's a handle, like a handlebar off of your old bike, and you pull out this telescopic antenna, you have a point at which it's pivoted, and then inside are ball bearings. So as you walk, it goes, but it looks real cool when you pull out this thing. It looks like James Bond should be using it instead of everybody else. So a lot of this is done with a witching process and then a follow-up with excavations. So as the quilt would expand, as the historic information's here, as more data would be gathered, it would be phenomenal. It's already a phenomenal tool. It would be, the Germans have an expression, it would be more better. So it'd be even more better. But this is fantastic. Nicole and her team, as was noted, they were only given about 4 months. I mean, this whole thing popped to the forefront in October. I think it was late October, late October, maybe early October of last year. And they have been literally working on this thing since then and even on into now. As far as additional data, just so everybody realizes, yes, we received some last week at the public hearing. I know with the historic road work that I've worked with Nicole and her team, when we thought, okay, we found everything that was in archives, we're done. Since then, there have been 2 more times where literally people pulled it out of their attics because great-grandpa was a member of the township, and oh yeah, he saved these. So we've gone back to archives, back to the state archives 3 times, and there are 3 versions of info. So more data will pop historic, as well as more data from now. Now, please realize that this also may involve additional dollars on the part of county for this reason. Nicole's team stretched themselves to pull this together. As more comes out, because everything has to be stitched together, the aerials that are here, if you look at this, it looks really nice and you get an image of a 1967 aerial that comes out, but these are in components. So you have to take a piece, stitch it, take a piece, stitch it. And they have to do this for the whole county, for 3 sets of the years. And as you look at that, more time. As you look at Adam's team over at McHenry County Planning Development, it's fine to say, yeah, let's go back and look at 14 years worth of records. That's wonderful. But that means going in, pulling a file, finding the right one, scanning, submitting it to the team here. Adam's team has also reached out to Huddleston McBride, the people that you see that have been doing drain tile studies. They're the major one, others can. And they're trying to attain some of their records in just a massive PDF form, which would be great too. So you may receive requests for additional budgeting because of this on the part of the other, part of the involved team members. Please also realize that in addition to Conservation District Planning and Development, Recorders has provided data because we had an oddball project whereby all of the county surveying data that had been lost ended up being returned. But it was from the mid-1800s to 1957. And so I'm still working with them. Every once in a while, they come with drain tile data. We've even helped IDOT. Because if you know that new bend in Route 47 as you're heading southerly out of Woodstock, the bend where they put the bridge in and readjusted, we provided field tile data that assisted them from the old data from Recorders. So there's data there. Nicole's team is currently working with the assessors and county clerk because some of the districts, if you're in a district that's active, you're supposed to be paying part of your tax dollars. Not all of them are quite right. Some are outside of the district, some are in the district, not correctly being identified. So there's also correction going on there. So we're working with assessors, clerk. So this is a literally county-wide project. We're also working with the Farm Bureau as well as Conservation District. So everybody's involved. It's a big deal, and I'm going to be quiet.
Oh, that's fantastic information, and thank you very much. I think the committee members understand some of the drainage district stuff, and they're their own taxing body, correct? And okay. So Nicole, did you have more? Or?
Ernest covered it. I also just want to thank Edward Amu and Amanda Foley in the back there. They're also part of the GIS department and helped put this together.
So. No, good stuff. Obviously very important as more new subdivisions keep moving in. Now that there's a little building going on, we can solve a lot of problems if we are proactive on the drainage districts and how all this stuff fits together. So, good stuff. Jim?
Now, this is the second time I've seen this, and I do appreciate this presentation. And you learn a little bit more each time you see it, I think. And I think we have a wonderful start, but I think as a board, we have to concentrate on expanding this throughout the county because the access to all of these tile maps, I personally know some farmers who have a whole lot of tile maps but are going to refuse to give them up. And I've been beating a couple of them up to say, you need to do this. And that's a difficulty. We also have the large players for the last 50, 60, 70 years that have been putting a lot of this farm tile in, who certainly, some of it's in their heads, but they have the maps for them. And if we could get those, just like the Huddleston, if we could get those people to participate, that would fill in a whole lot of gaps for us. And one of my questions, and I didn't ask this the other day, one of my questions is on planning and development. We've had a lot of farmers who've taken it upon themselves to retile and put a whole lot of new tiling in. Along 47, you've seen several of them, 176, down toward Huntley. A lot of tiling has taken place in the last 4 or 5 years. Some of them come before the board with supposed violations and all that. Do we have all those maps from planning and development from all of those that they have put in recently?
Yeah, we should. If they would trigger a stormwater permit, we should. I mean,
and are they in here already?
I think the easy access was the recent drain tile studies with the solar farms. Those were the biggest, the largest ones that would kind of make that fabric of the quilt. We can look a little bit deeper into those stormwater permits, but again, they're kind of amid all of the others. So
the documents we added were already scanned. A lot of the documents, they're large prints that would require scanning. That's another component we have to work through with planning and development, is first getting the documents, and then we have to scan them, index them before putting them in. So there's a lot of legwork there that you have to work on.
Then the other day, one drainage district actually was there in attendance to that last meeting, and they mentioned some of their records they didn't see up there and I know Coon Creek, I know he had, the gentleman, he's 90 years old, or in his 90s, and he had a whole box of that he had given to Joanna in the past. Are all of those documents in there, especially for Coon Creek? Because that drainage district was reactivated. And I'd like to make sure that all those documents were entered and recorded, that they didn't just get copied or maybe not got copied. I believe he was given back his documents. But these are documents that we, like you said, Crystal Lake Drainage District used to have some and it's gone. And these are documents that we have in our hand or have the ability to get. If we haven't entered them into the system, we really need to get it done.
Good points, and in regards to the Hebron Drainage District, I did, it happens that, as you know, Tracy Van Bergen also sits on Transportation Committee. She was at last Wednesday's meeting, her husband joined, and when you guys went into executive session, Mike came over to talk to me, and he said, okay, we've located the data. I said, okay, great. So we retraced it back. He had actually provided it in 2017. As funny as it sounds, because there was no advance, and they tried to send too large a document, it jumped back to them. They separated into 3 components. He had sent it back to me, but it went to junk, because the county said, oh, this is junk. So we retrieved it, provided it to Nicole, and Nicole's team is now working with assessors and inputting that data.
Perfect.
I don't doubt that the information from Coon Creek was provided. It's difficult with Joanna not present. And we just recently had a shift of our GIS people. We had one depart to go back at East Coast, and we had a new guy start in. He's still finding records 3 years later, like, oh, look, they had that. So it could very well be. The other difficulty with the older documents, it's twofold. One, it's best to take recorded documents or something that's an official document, not just somebody saying, well, I remember when Grandpa put in. Anecdotal are good, but and I agree.
As for those documents, those are all the original engineering of that drainage ditches and everything through there. I saw that. They are very good documents, and I hope you can find those. If you can't, we need to get back with him.
Yes.
And get those and retrieve that again, because he had all the original layout of the entire drainage, the tiles and everything. Original engineering, he has it all.
And on the point
with the grades and everything.
On the point you made, the other thing is you imitated the shape of a banker's box. I'm assuming that's kind of about the size of the box.
Oh, yeah.
Those documents, realize they're probably pushing 100 years plus old.
You gotta get
that means they're very brittle. So we also can't use our standard roll type scanners. We now need to have flatbed. Well, right now, I know there's one in Recorders because I work with Chelsea down there when they're doing things, and they'll pull it out. As a matter of fact, some of the documents, they even, and I have to too, you have to put on the white cotton gloves so that you're not putting your oil onto the thing and causing a decay. We may need more flatbed scanners as well. And again, staff to do it. I mean, it's nice to say, here's a box. I've sat and scanned boxes like that. You're talking days. And you can't just give it to a low level, because otherwise it's like, yeah, whatever, yeah, whatever. I mean, you want it crisp, clear, the whole thing. So you have to have competent people working at it. And again, you need more people, because all of our departments, everyone's tasked. I was shocked when Nicole and her team could put this together, because they've got 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 other projects. And I was like, we'll do this right now. And it's like, okay, fine. So we all stretch. But maybe I'm beating a horse I shouldn't, but you could see more need for staff and material to keep this thing going and flourishing.
Well, and most people know I'm a huge supporter of this and of mapping out the tiles and everything. One other thought on this is when you pull up and you show a farm, a solar farm that has done the survey and then those mains go off into another adjoining parcel. You know, those mains go a long way a lot. And I'm wondering, of course, it's going to take someone with our, I believe, probably going to take our direction to give the resources to someone to go out and literally, I think possibly just contact the landowners in those areas around and say, do we have a way to extend this on? Or 2 or 3 parcels down the road from there, or downstream, upstream, because maybe those landowners do have all their tile maps. And I know I've sat in some zoning issues, or zoning hearings and all that, and personally have asked, do they have the tile maps? And the landowners say, I don't have it. Even though I know there's tile that go through there.
You also broached on it a little bit before, kind of in an innuendo format. You've sat and heard where people who are in violation are being brought before, before the board because of a violation issued by planning and development. It's a double-edged sword, okay? The farming community would love to have all of the field tile information. However, the farming community look at P&D and ourselves and any of us as, don't worry, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you. Yeah, right.
I agree. I agree with this more than you know.
Getting them to come on board, you're going to have a difficulty because the other problem they have, in their mind, they have the right to do it. It's their land, okay? And it's an older mindset, and there's nothing wrong with that mindset, but you have to look at the overall good, which is what P&D is doing. And so broaching that is tough. I know anytime we're doing something with a bridge that involves the farming group, we make it a point, I go down, I go to the Farm Bureau meeting, I present what's happening and why we're doing. I still take flack. And I stand there, I'm a member. I say, look, I'm here as a member, I'm here as a person who owns land, I'm here. I still take enough flack that they're willing to talk to me. But you're going to, they have that adversarial and they keep all their information close to their chest. So I think it'd be a great thing if you could reach out and get a hands across the aisle kind of thing, but I don't know that we'll find it. It's going to be tough.
Sure. One last note that I made watching this presentation, and I thought about it both times, is that I believe we have the answer. I think I know the answer, but I think we have to have the answer so when that question arises, when they see that map, especially our farm community, when they see that map and it shows in our conservation district that we took tile out, that the mains that ran through those areas that drain the upland are still intact. And I believe the answer is they have to be. That you can't go in and break a main.
You're referring
you have
to
reroute it. And I want to make sure that that's actually, that we have that answer, that we actually do that.
You're referring to some of the riparian laws of the state of Illinois, and they broach a series of different levels: transportation, agricultural, general public. And yes, even when we do projects, there are times, I know I've looked at the 1950s drawings, when River Road was put in, we intercepted in the field inadvertently 4 tiles. And documentation was done to manifold them, get them back across, and reconnect them. So that the roadway, we didn't want them to be broken under ours because it deteriorates the substructure. But by the same token, we didn't want to affect people, upstream of this. So this is done. Conservation District is very good about it also. They look and say, okay, we want to create, like Lost Valley is a pocket. They didn't say, well, let's bust up everyone coming through. They were, they chose critically. So it is being done, but again, the farming community.
And I understand that, and because of, like, I believe we did a grant for Goose Lake, I think it was Goose Lake up in Hebron, on the Stormwater Commission several years ago. And it was brought up, there was a main went right through there, and they had to put a solid piping through that to make that work.
Yes.
So I know it's done, but that answer, when we do presentations, I believe you need to bring that out, because that will get rid of alleviate some of the people who were trying to get in to this, to buy into this, that eliminate to say, hey, they broke those up. But you already have the answer why they broke them up. And you already have the answer that it didn't affect you upstream. And so I think you should be ready for those questions when you make these presentations. Because I believe we should move this on to, I know Farm Bureau was at that last meeting.
Yes, Dan Folkers was present.
Yeah, Dan was there, and And it would be nice if the Farm Bureau could get a number of farmers to come in for a presentation like this of why we're trying to do this. And land, not only just farmers, but the landowners, you know, if anybody would get in. If we could get as many in as possible to buy into this, we gotta get them to buy into this because, like you said, personal information, the question on Huddleston was whether they could share that information with us because they were paid by a landowner to do it. And that was one of the questions and concerns that you guys had. So we got to get everybody to buy in to release this information.
To that end, I know Farm Bureau was Dan Folkers was in contact because we also run the Living Snow Fence program. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to know, okay, how many farmers participated, you know, are there contracts being paid out? And we're working on that. And he'd like another presentation on it in March because their February meeting's already full. And then he said, oh, by the way, would it be possible to at least, you know, go through some of this? And I said, it's possible. The only thing is currently it is not live, if you will. It is able to be operated within GISs. It is ready to go live. I mean, it could go live, and it would almost be better, I guess in my mind, and this is a personal opinion, if it were to go live and the farmers could have a month or two to play with it, especially this time of year when they're not out in the field or trying to get harvest in or crops into the ground, that they could kind of look at it and go, okay, I see that. And then they'd at least have a feel for it. But to have it go live would require some group to say, okay, let's make it a live map on the interactive site of GIS and then start putting out the word. So it would need to go through, you know, our lovely PR department and push it. We need to get however we could. And also, I'd contact Farm Bureau, have them put it on their newsletter, say, look at it. And it would be a way of getting out there. It's still going to take time because they still have a scared position from the farming community, I'd say. Scared, yeah, it's a good one.
I've asked so many questions, I'm sorry, but.
But you're gonna ask another one?
I'm just gonna make a request that whatever we have to do to get this up live, and I know we pushed it forward from that last meeting, was pushed forward to here.
I was just taking notes and I think it can be on the agenda for next month.
It was pushed forward to here to try to get it to come up live. Well, next month is March already. Is there a way we could put it to the board, to the county, or to the board, whatever we gotta do for this month, just to get it saying, hey, let's take this live. Do they need board permission?
I don't know. We got to talk to Scott.
I would defer to GIS and ask the question, are they ready to go live? Because we just scratched the surface. You've seen all the information. There's so much more to come in. Not only our internal documents as Arne said, rebuilding since 2004 to make this a little bit much more comprehensive, but all that external documents, all those people who have the boxes out in their attic or somewhere. So a lot more needs to be developed. What we don't want to do is release it prematurely, have people rely on it, and then come back and say, wait a minute, you had it on your map, this was right, but it turns out to be wrong. So I think whenever the time is right, and I prefaced this conversation, this was a Herculean task, and I want to commend Nicole and her leadership of her department and her team for doing this in addition to everything else that they've been doing. They had to fit this in, and hopefully you can see and appreciate the amount of work, but I'm sure if you sit in her office or her, with her team for an hour and see what it takes to literally stitch all this together. Ernest, I think, set the table of saying, if we were to commit to this, does that mean a commitment of additional resources, i.e. additional staff, additional equipment? And we want to leave that on the table. That's on an ask right now, but in order to do this and to do this justice, that is something that the county board may need to consider and to commit to. We're not here for that right now. We just want to show you where we're at. I would say that to the question, we're probably a bit premature to go prime time or go live with this, but we wanted to let you know where we are, that we've been working diligently. I say we, Nicole and Ernest and her team, they've been working diligently on this. This is incredible. It's an incredible, comprehensive understanding of our system. Like I said, we scratched the surface, so much more to do. We'd be happy to update, but just defer to whenever they feel, and I say it's in a position to then go live with it, then we can go live. But I don't think we're not anywhere near there. Would you agree with that, Nicole?
Well, we could definitely go live. The one thing that's gonna be changing in the very near future is the active district boundaries as we're getting this information in. So that maybe, I don't, it'd be up to you if you wanna show it where it is now and then how it changes, or just wait until we get more of these official documents and then work with the clerk to update that official boundary. So it's not.
You could put something on it, subject to updates,
Or soliciting
or whatever.
information from
I mean,
the
so
people.
They did write up a disclaimer. I don't know if, when you go into Athena, the first thing comes up as a disclaimer, and this is the best available documentation we have kind of thing.
Yeah.
They have a disclaimer that they wrote up, which I thought was pretty good, and it would be ready so that, because we were even talking after the last meeting, we're like, well, does it go live after this meeting or not? Because live and not is, my understanding, it's usually the discretion of GIS, but they usually look for some word from on high. So I guess in the theory, it could go live today, I guess, in theory.
In theory,
In
yes.
theory, I mean,
But it's when everybody's comfortable with the information.
Well, I would say at the very least, we know Hebron Drainage District information is forthcoming. Maybe get that in, and that will help make that area a little bit more comprehensive.
Okay, well, let's talk about that, and we'll talk, Scott. I'm gonna start with Carl because he's had his hand up.
Two quick questions. One, is there a way we can get your presentation emailed to us?
Sure.
To go into what you were saying, that, hey, we may need more staff, we may need to get flat scanner. Have we ever stopped and looked outside of our office that there may be state agencies that's their sole job to do that, or private companies that's their sole job to take data, pictures, papers, documents, to digitalize them, so we're not having to hire staff and say, hey, we're done with you in about a year, have a nice day, or we're buying this equipment that we're stuck with because technology changes, but go outside the house, and because it's a temporary use, kind of, once we get the data, it's stored, we're just updating it from then on out, is kind of the way I'm seeing you guys present it.
Yes, and not on this project, but when I came upon one piece of paper from the 1930s back at our office, and this is what got me trying to track down the road thing. And I was given limited time, I could do little bits of research. It happens that we did locate them, and they were in archives, but archives didn't even know what they were. So now we had these documents, boxes and boxes, what do we do with them? Archives, the predecessor of the current head of archives, came up with a notion, which was they tapped state archives. Ours is the only county that still has road papers. No other county in the state of Illinois. Our state archives thought this was a big deal, they wanted them. So our archivist said, we'll make you a deal. You can have them, and they're right now down at NIU in DeKalb, stored in the state archives. But before you can have them, you have to give us a scanned copy. So they, at their expense, we all paid for it in our taxes, I take it back. But they did all the scanning. They produced it all for us. Then we got that raw data back. Our department worked with GIS, and we then cataloged every single one, what road was what. They then created the historic viewer for roads, and they produced it, and in essence, similar to what Nicole showed here, you see a segment of road, you click on it, you get to see the original road papers, and we've been utilizing this with surveyors, with our own project for the last, 6 years, 7 years ago? 6 or 7 years ago, and that was done with outside resources because of state archives. Now, drainage, you always have to find somebody who wants to help you. So state archives was dying for it. Drainage isn't the same. You get south of here. I mean, most people think in our area, oh, Illinois is Chicago in the northeast quadrant of state of Illinois. You get a little bit south of here, and they have so many drainage documents and so much record keeping because it's still more agrarian. So this is like if a diamond looked like a raisin, would it be worth anything? I don't know if we could tap state archives like that. But in that case, we did do that. We're always trying to find, but as I was working, I was like, I don't know who you're gonna get to bite at this. So
or even a private sector company. But to save the county some money, not having to hire or whatnot.
And to that end, I know DOT one time looked at the fact, we have flat files worth of documentation. And we were looking at, okay, how could we get this scanned? So there was one point at which, okay, they asked for, this is probably 6 years ago, they asked for a clump of money. How far can we get with this? So I believe it was right around $10,000, and we have roads, obviously we keep them in alphabetic order. We got through the C's, so we got A, B, and C done. They weren't even done with the C, and we get a call from the contractor, you're out of money. So we received back that data. I want to say it was maybe 10% of our collection. And everybody's like, okay, let's use that as a guideline. And we kind of looked at the drawers and like, well, maybe it's only about 5%. And everybody's like, we're not going to get anybody to prove $200,000 to go out of house for something. And then the thing about it is, even though you have that data now scanned, it still takes in-house resources to go, okay, what is this? What is that? How does that fit? So it's a chicken and egg kind of thing. Is it better to have your own people in-house that know what they're doing, do it, and then put it? Or is it better to have a subcontractor do it, hand it to you, and now someone still has to go, well, where does this belong? So we've looked. It's not as though we have not looked.
Yeah, and I just, that's a very fair question. We're not here asking for resources. We just wanted to update you on where we're at. When the time comes, it's certainly a consideration whether we absorb it in-house, because it's something that you add staff, or something that you can outsource. So those options obviously will be explored if we get to that point. So, but right now we're not here really for that. We just wanted to let you know this is a commitment, whether it's dollars outsourcing or staff, but it's a big project. We're very proud of the work that they've done. But as you can see, it's a lot of work.
My comment just goes to when you release it, I would want to make certain that if it's too early, what I see happen is the farmer looks at it once and goes, oh, this is junk, and they never come back to it. And I don't think it's junk. I just know that if it was my farm and I realized that you didn't have anything on it, I'd probably never look at it again. And so I would rather be in a situation where you're comfortable that it's ready to go. I don't want you to hurry it. I don't want you to slow it down either. Just when you think there's something there. And then on your, as your disclaimer goes, I would put something on it that says, if you have information that's contrary to this, we would love to have it, so that we can fix it.
That as well as, I think it was yourself, sir, that noted and request data at the same time. Say, if you have more, please submit for review. And at the public meeting, it was also noted, it'd be nicer if it could be recorded documents. And because the drainage districts can be considered governmental, and governmental agencies are allowed to record at no cost, it might be nice to record as well, not just, hey, I found this in my attic, who knows? So we're looking at that and to solicit the data, and also say if you have contrary, because as noted, just in last Monday's meeting, the boundaries are different than what were plotted 100 years ago. So proof positive of what you're saying, Mr. Gunn.
John, you had something? Or?
Well, just, my thought on it is if you think what you have is ready, I mean, you spend all this time and resources on it, we're wasting the resources by just sitting with it and not sharing it, at least what we have. That's just my opinion, and then, it seems like this is gonna be a work in progress that can take forever, right? I would just keep it moving as you get the information and just keep going with it. It's a great project, but I don't know that I'd create a new department for it. Just my thoughts.
This is, I couldn't imagine a 5-year project or whatever.
I'm sure you could spend millions on it, but I would.
So maybe it's in the disclosure up there, disclaimer, continuing to update, please check back if something to that effect.
Work in progress.
Yeah, but I mean, good stuff. Jim?
I'd only like to stress the importance of this because, Father Time catches us all. Ernest has had this on a map for years, a hand-held map for years in his office. And I've said to him several times, you can't ever retire.
That's the goal.
And we need to keep a guard on them so that nothing ever happens to us. Because this is what's all over our county, this kind of history. And so we have to really be diligent on this, I feel. And we have to stay on it. And I'm not sure how to go about it, because I think we're going about it the right way. But I think we need to really, as a board, we need to focus on this. This is very important to our county.
Carolyn, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to say, so you have presented this before, and I think you said you saw it before. Where was that? What meeting was that?
It was last Monday.
Last Monday, a public meeting was offered at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a week ago yesterday. It was 2 boardrooms over,
Okay.
and maybe
There was only 2
20
board
people.
members.
Well, was it like, I mean, who else was in the room? Did we have some of our farm community there? I mean,
We did, we had Dave Ogus from the Farm Bureau in attendance. Representatives from Hebron's Drainage District were in attendance. It wasn't actually a public meeting, it's not something that we posted.
oh, okay.
But it was just,
Trying to reach out to
we
certain.
got to the
okay,
point
right.
where we wanted then to reach out to those parties that would be, beneficial.
So it wouldn't have been recorded?
Correct. It was just more of a,
Okay.
let's just say.
And then that's when we said you should push it forward to this committee.
Okay.
To bring it out.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody set? Thank you very much. Very informative.
Thanks, Nicole.
Please keep
Great
updating
job.
work on it. That's fantastic.
Right, yeah.
We're gonna move on to, there's nothing on the routine consent agenda today.
Oh, we missed one. Green initiative.
6-2.
Green initiatives.
Oh, 6-2. Yeah, I'm sorry.
She would get a little upset.
6-2. Green Initiative's webpage debut.
And I'm sure you're asking, how do you follow the drainage district presentation, right? Well,
You do.
prepare to, well, maybe it will be.
They were the warm-up band.
They were the warm-up band. No, actually, an equally exciting project that the staff has been working on. Your strategic plan talks about carbon neutrality, alternative energy sources, a variety of ways to reduce the county's environmental impact and energy impact. But that's not new to McHenry County. In fact, I'll point out, these are on the roof of this building, we have solar panels that were installed around 2009, 2010 with the ARRA dollars when they came in. So McHenry County has been working on green initiatives for 15 to 20 plus years. In fact, I would say it goes on before that. But we've done a lot of different things, and we're doing a lot of different things, but we don't have a good clearinghouse to show and celebrate what's been done. And there's a lot of things that are moving forward. Tomorrow at Administrative Services, for those on the committee, you'll have a presentation on the county's work towards moving to electric vehicles and where things are sitting with that respect. A lot of work is underway, a lot of work has been done, a lot of things to celebrate. So we wanted to put it all together into a Green Initiatives webpage, so not only the county board, but the county can see what you've done, what we're doing, and with that, Alicia, take it away.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for that introduction. So the Green Initiatives website. So there's been a lot of different things that we've done over the years. McHenry County is actually an award-winning green county in many ways, and received awards over the years. And we want to showcase 6 different key areas where McHenry County has excelled. So we've got the solar panel section, electric vehicles, water conservation, reducing our carbon footprint, the LED lighting. Many of the lighting throughout this county has been converted by our facilities department, and of course our incredible xeriscape garden. But what's really cool about this page is that you can see a little bit more about how it works and go down to different places on it, so you can drill into more detail on the areas that interest you. I understand that with green initiatives, green can mean many things to many different people, and want to make sure that people can pursue their own interests on this page without getting bogged down. And of course, you can watch our videos that we've created on the different initiatives that we've had, and learn a little bit more, look at different plans and documents that we've put together over the years. And again, this has been going on for decades. And I say that sincerely. I mean, in 2015, we won the Illinois Governor's Sustainability Award because of the carbon emissions reductions that we've done. So again, lots of work has gone into this, and I'm very grateful for my partners in facilities management, the Procurement and Special Services Department, and of course Scott, for helping me put this page together. And I can never forget IT. Thank you guys. Is there anything you guys would like to look into a little bit more?
Carl?
I'm just going through your page here. It's a very nice interactive page.
Yeah, and personally, I love these little these little doohickeys right here that Greg makes for us. So cool. So,
Nice doohickeys, Greg.
Carl, did you have something?
Yeah, Greg Page did good. I don't know who to question, if it's to Mr. Hartman or you, but who do we gotta start looking at to pump the brakes on all this? We gotta go electric EVs, because we're finding out, let's go back in time a little bit. 1901, Los Angeles time, electric automotives will quickly take over. Let's go back up to my age. 59, New York Times, electric vehicles may be the lead of tomorrow. 1980, Washington Post, practical electric cars can be built. We've been lied to for over 100 years. We're seeing just this last winter, they don't work. And anyone that has electronics degree will tell you, batteries don't like to be cold. We also see that we can't produce them here. We're sending our money overseas. We're taking a 1,200-pound battery, taking 5,000 a ton of material to make this battery. In my industry, manufacturing, we're already hearing electric companies saying, hey, you battery people, can you slow it down? We can't supply you the electric. The big question is, hey, when you plug your car in, where do you think that electric came from? Usually some pico plant, coal, or nuclear. Instead of going hog wild, why don't we pump the brakes a little bit to see how this shakes out before we start spending money that for 100 years we've been lied to?
So, and I think that's a very fair question. Ultimately, who does that? The county board, because as we purchase, or if we bring electric vehicles forward, if they're over $30,000, the county board would need to approve that contract. So ultimately, it will stop at the county board into your decision. There's a lot of considerations that go into electric vehicles, the practicality of it, the infrastructure that needs to be put in to support it. And I don't want to steal too much of Adam LaTundra and Tom Burrow's thunder tomorrow at Administrative Services, but those are things that they'll discuss. It's not a foregone conclusion that the county fleet can be transferred over to electric. Are there some applications that it may work, but there are others where it may not. So yeah, a lot to consider. But to your simple answer to your question, the county board needs to provide that direction. I mean, it's ultimately going to come through you to determine whether or not we move forward.
and there is a lovely report that is on the electric vehicle section of this page too, that you can feel, that can analyze some options for you. So you can feel free to have some additional reading.
And that's going to be the basis, or I should say the foundation of tomorrow's discussion.
Okay, if I got just a second, and I know Teresa Meshes is here and Pam Altoff. Teresa, Spongy Moth, or did you want to come up and join us? Pam, you're both welcome to come up to the table. I didn't know this discussion was what you're here for or interested in. If you are, please feel free to come up to the table.
Sure. Let's go together, yeah.
I'll refer back here.
So just, Alicia, that was great. I think that's a wonderful thing to highlight and to bring forward and all the work that went into it.
Come sit next to me so you can think.
I'm sorry I didn't invite you up before when I seen you. I clicked out because you had sent me the email about the Spongy Moth discussion, so that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But
I'm always here for all the discussion.
all the discussion,
Yes.
okay. So Alicia, I didn't mean, no, we're not changing. No, I'm not changing you off.
I thought you were changing me
No,
off.
I wasn't stopping you. I'm sorry. We got into a little discussion here and they were in the background and I thought I wanted to make sure if they were on here for this subject that they could join us too.
Oh,
I just wasn't sure but I apologize for not being more clear about that.
All right, no worries.
And is this up on our website at this time?
It is on the website, sir.
Okay.
I don't believe it's navigable yet. I'm sorry, I don't know how you.
It worked great yesterday. Just like you're scrolling through,
All right,
it worked, wonderfully.
all right, let's
The
see.
document.
Because I went to the county government.
I apologize, we've had a little bit of re-imaging going on, so everything is a little bit different than what we're used to. All right, got it. So I'm gonna get right back there. Yeah, we recently redid mine too, so everything is just a little bit different.
See, this is where I went to look for it. I mean, I printed it out from the email and I.
Here it is, right here.
It's up, it's right here.
Okay.
So it's right there under the county government, green initiatives.
The carbon.
And this is, you know, and this is.
Yeah, I found it on the homepage.
What the heck? I cheated at my own page. I'll take your word for it.
Here, you just go right here under, and it's, you kind of scroll right underneath FOIA requests. And that's where it lives.
Okay. It always takes a long time in here because of the way our internet works with our system.
Okay, so this,
At home,
when
it'll
was
be
this
much
put up?
faster.
Well, you can also refresh your browser too. Sometimes that helps because, you know, we have been updating this, so sometimes
Okay.
if you don't refresh, it doesn't.
Okay. I won't hold up the meeting for it, I'll find it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the reports are coming up, it's working.
I'm glad to see our green initiatives. I'm a big supporter of not trying to pump the brakes on it. So the fact that we've been talking about this for over 100 years says that the brakes have been pumped too many times in those last 100 years to me.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm gonna stay on this, I'm gonna stay on your presentation. Great presentation. I really like this setup and everything. One question that has been asked of me several times over the years is about our solar panels on the roof. How much electricity do they generate? Do we have that ability? How much electricity have they generated and money that they've saved us?
We do know how much electricity they've generated. That's been tracked. Downstairs in the entryway for this building, there used to be a kiosk, a big gray TV, and that literally tracked real time what it produced. That kiosk doesn't work anymore. We've taken that offline, but the solar panels are still generating. I don't know if it's on the website, but we can certainly get that information.
Well, and I know that they do power a lot of these lights as well.
Yeah.
But that'd be good to put up there on that site of how much it saved us. Because like the school district in Hunt, they put up thousands of panels around all the schools. And it'd be curious to see what that actually saves.
We'll work on getting that on if it's not on there.
Thank you for
but
that
we,
suggestion.
Years ago.
Now, I don't know, it's hard to translate how much we save because the electric rates obviously
Well,
change and
sure,
fluctuate.
but how much electricity,
Yes.
kilowatts.
Yeah.
How much it accounts for, like,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that's older, well, how long I'm sorry, how long have those been on the roof?
2010.
Yeah, about
Okay, so they're
2010.
actually, I mean, today, they would be much more efficient, right? So, and I think they're set, they don't follow, right? So there's,
Fixed position.
but, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they're doing.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah, go ahead, Lou.
Of course.
Are we, in this discussion, are we talking about our policy on electric vehicles, or are we just talking about the presentation of this webpage?
Presentation of the webpage would be my understanding, Lou. It just,
Okay,
it
so-
came up from one committee member,
Okay.
their opinion on the electric vehicle situation, but that is not not what we're discussing.
The agenda just has the
Okay.
presentation.
Yeah, we can't.
Well, I think the webpage is well done, and it's great. It's very navigated, it's very friendly to use, gives you good information, but not a lot of information, and so, yes, well done, Alicia.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lou, for your input. Okay, anything else you want to say, Alicia, or?
I think we've pretty much covered it all. If you have any questions or any suggestions for other content we can keep on here, feel free to let me know. We were hoping this would be a living page, so as more accomplishments occur, we can keep it updated and let the public know about all the work we do across many different areas to be kind to our environment.
Great.
I'll celebrate.
Yep, I think it's, I like it too. I mean, it's sort of concise, it'll keep the people's attention.
I look for more doohickeys coming from Greg all the time.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, nothing else on that? Thank you very much.
That's
Okay, 16. Done, move on, nothing on the routine consent agenda. So we're gonna move to old business, Spongy Moth discussion and direction. I don't know if any of you read the email that was sent out with, I put a little letter on where we were at with this, what we've done, what we discussed. Asked if anybody else had any opinions, that they could contact me, sort of let me know. Teresa Meshers did. I'm sure she'll express her opinion when we get into discussion. Pam, are you here for that too, or, okay. So that's good. Those are I didn't hear from a lot of other board members. These are the two that have some concerns and maybe constituents that have talked to them. We're here to learn that today. So Scott, if you want to start, maybe a little background with what our Spongy Moth discussions have been.
Yeah, and I'll go back to last month's meeting. The committee had provided direction based on all the data, the trap data, and identified potential hotspots. The direction was for the county to look at putting together a program that would be on a cost share basis. You cost share 50-50 with the property owners for spraying identified potential treatment blocks, and if it's within a municipality, to contact the municipality and seek their participation, so on a one-third basis. And with that was step one, would be to further identify the treatment blocks, because they're only potential, contact property owners, contact municipalities, see what interest there is, because if you didn't have property owner consent or the municipal consent, then that wouldn't be an area that would be subject for treatment. And with that, then step two would be to do field verification to ensure that those areas are something we should treat, and that is largely by looking at egg masses. Spongy moths are called spongy moths because the egg masses are almost look like sponges, white sponge or whitish color sponge material on trees or on firewood or on your patio furniture or wherever the female was when it laid the eggs. And if you find those, then you know that that is an area that's going to be affected again with spongy moths. So just because it's a potential treatment block area doesn't mean that it would be something you'd want to treat if there are no spongy moth there. Because, so that there was a direction coming out of the January meeting, and a lot of it was based on the cost, and we did receive pricing from Hendrickson's Flying Service, which would be the vendor that works for the state and would work with the county. But after that meeting, the Conservation District had provided additional information. In fact, it was, I think, within an hour or so after the meeting, reaffirming their position of not spraying. And they communicated this to you, I believe, either March or April of last year when this topic first came to the table for the committee. And they said, we don't spray, and they provided their reasons for the spraying and cited the cascading effect of if you spray and what that does, and then it's down the food chain. So after your direction, their information came out, and I think it's important to this committee's consideration. And I just put up on the map, or put up on the screen, the data map, and it's kind of hard to see, but the numbers that have green highlight represent Conservation District traps. So these are within the properties. So based on their position, there would not be treatment as far as spraying. Now, what the Conservation District said, that they found a tree that's infested, they would surgically treat it. There's other tools that are available, but they wouldn't do the blanket spray. I did ask our Conservation District partners to be here in case you have any questions about their position, but in essence, they take a no-spray approach. And the challenge that I'll point out is you can see on this map, all the areas colored in green, some with very high numbers, represent a lot of the county. But those areas would not be addressed. We are an infested county. We don't receive any dollars from the state or for the federal programs to address spongy moths, because the line, the spread is west of us. That's the slow spread program that you heard so much about. So anything that's happened in McHenry County would only be to just knock down populations in the hotspots. It's called a suppression program. And the suppression program would be obviously funded by either if the county participates or through private owners. Last year we had some property owners who addressed the the committee, and they took it upon themselves to do spraying for their areas. They got their neighbors together at their expense and they sprayed. That's actually identified as block 1. So what the county would do, as it did in 2009, 2010, would be just targeting areas for treatment to suppress those hotspots. This program would be similar. We've identified 4 potential treatment blocks that, once again, need further field verification and consent. That hasn't been done. And all that's been done so far, and for a variety of reasons, was to contact in Block 2, since it falls within the Village of Bull Valley, contact the Village of Bull Valley President, Emily Barrett, and present kind of the county's thinking and the fact that, there could be a potential program and what would their thoughts be. The Bull Valley Village Board will meet on February 26th, and they're going to specifically talk about this. The indication I have leaving that conversation with President Barrett was not generally supported. They cite a lot of their work with pollinators, pollinator gardens, areas for monarch butterflies, and because of that, that causes obviously some hesitancy, but they're going to definitively make that decision on February 26th. If Village of Bull Valley is not in support of a program, then it comes to the question, would the county want to support a program within Bull Valley corporate limits if you don't have your municipal partner on board? So that becomes, a very important consideration.
Scott,
We're not going to do that. I don't see that we would be doing that.
And we had this conversation last month at the last meeting. If they're not, we're not. I thought that was a pretty definitive direction.
Yeah. Well, and the reason we're revisiting this for everyone is that we didn't have a complete consensus on what we should or shouldn't do. It was sort of a 4-3, 3-4, some conversations on where we're at. But there was a general consensus that we would support some type of spraying. And then the more specific memorandum came from the Conservation District, and a couple of committee members had contacted me about that maybe we need to revisit this and have that as part of the bigger conversation. So, and Scott, go ahead and finish.
Just to give you context, this is potential treatment block 2, which includes the Village of Bull Valley. This is South Fleming Road. I don't have it highlighted, but generally, kind of in the middle, and these aren't all the specific properties, but a lot of the properties within that area fall within the Village of Bull Valley corporate limits. So if they're out, that really affects this treatment block. So, but with that, and I really think that the Conservation District's position, now that you know it, well, I mean, you knew it going into it, but they reaffirmed it after your meeting. Probably warrants additional discussion of this committee to say, okay, what do you want to do? At this point in time, from a timing standpoint, we're far enough along that, if we don't move until March, we can still potentially put something together. There's some filings that we'll have to do with the EcoCat system, but a lot of the pieces have already been put in place. Unlike this time last year when you talked about it, we didn't do anything. And to start that process would not afford enough time. Your spraying typically is going to happen anywhere from the end of April through May, and there's a lot of conditions that dictate that timing, because it's all about timing. You can't just schedule it and do it. You've got to wait till the instars hatch and wait till the oak trees are in leaf. So all that has to be taken into consideration. But we're to the point where something can be done, but the bigger question is, to the committee and to the county, should the county do anything? Based on the Conservation District partners saying, we're not going to do anything. The treatment blocks will suppress hotspots within specific areas, but we know we're not going to eradicate the spongy moth population in McHenry County. And so with that, I would welcome the committee's continued discussion on that.
Yeah, every year that's sort of a variation on how bad this is. We had, I believe, a report about this last year was bad. A lot of it had been a push down from Wisconsin, so the northern counties got it the worst. So any other one wants to weigh in on this?
Would it be inappropriate to ask the Conservation District to come up and kind of give us a brief?
Yeah, certainly if you want to.
They're here, they made the effort to come. Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, if you have anything else
Thank
you'd
you.
want to add to,
Good morning. Elizabeth Kessler, Executive Director for the Conservation District. I'm here with colleagues, Ed Collins, our Director of Land Preservation and Natural Resources, and Cindy Jablonski, who is our wildlife ecologist. So they're the scientists. I'm just going to give you some brief from the administrator's policy perspective in our board, and you were correct. We took a position that we are not spraying. We have very many constituent voices that we hold near and dear. The individuals that are taxpayers and residents that are here, the humans that make up our county, but also the different species. And so this is kind of a conservation battle between our oak ecosystem that's there, and then our pollinators, and then this invasive spongy moth that's coming in, and they're trying to make a living as well. And so we do appreciate the concerns. We appreciate the individual determination of what to happen. Our policy is just, again, because of its adverse impact to the pollinators, our focus has been to reforest, to make sure that we're managing as a climate resilient future, which means there's going to be constant ebbs and flows of things that are happening and how we ensure that going forward that we're making smart decisions. So with that, our pollinators are really important for human health. They're very important for our food production. Our oak ecosystems, we are reforesting through our big woods programs and other areas to ensure that our systems are healthy. We've been leaders with our oak ecosystems. We're across the whole region. Others have mapped, and that came from our science team here on the work that they've done. So we're managing with the facts that we know today and as being as proactive as we can. Anything else, Cindy and Ed, that you'd like to add to our position?
I could add a couple of things that might just be of interest. The first is...
Can you come up here so
Got
it's being...
the mics.
Ed, you're one of my favorite presenters.
I think Ernest and I are the only two people in the world to collect drain tiles.
I was going to say, I'm sure your ears worked up.
Just a little bit of background that might be useful. The first gypsy moth infestation in the county was in the 80s, very early 80s. It was limited to 2 trees that came from a vacation car. So in that case, treating those trees, we were able to stop gypsy moth establishment in the county. We're long past that, as was noted. We're now way behind the line of invasion. So the strategy has shifted from 2008, 2009, when gypsy moth first became a major problem in the county, to today, from trying to eliminate the gypsy moth population to suppressing it. So that's where we are, and that's where the county will be for the foreseeable future. Another piece of information that might be useful to you is there is a naturally occurring fungus, which I will probably not pronounce right, is entophagia, that's lethal to gypsy moth. It is established in the eastern part of the United States, Michigan, places like that. We actually sent some of our scientists there in 2008, 2009 to search for dead gypsy moth caterpillars that had been killed by the fungus because they have a very distinctive pattern. We found them, we brought them back, we established that fungus in McHenry County on district site, so it spreads out from there. So we've made some efforts, as we are able to really put some natural checks in place for gypsy moth explosions. Nonetheless, that's going to happen. That's the ebb and flow of natural cycles. So I would just say to you that there are a couple of things you might want to take into consideration when you're looking at an overall spraying thing. One is that we know that areas that are sprayed will lose everything in the Lepidoptera, which is the moths and butterfly categories, because it's non-specific. So what you want is to have a place where those areas that have been sprayed can have reinvasion from places where those things didn't die off. So district sites are actually those refugias. If you lose all the caterpillars in private property around a district site, for example, the place where those species will reinvade from is where it wasn't sprayed. So you need to look at district sites from that perspective as well. The second thing is that we have sites that we have received pollinator grants for, where we would be out of compliance with that grant if we sprayed something specifically to kill caterpillars. And the third thing is, wherever there is an Illinois nature preserve in the county, whether it's on private property or district property, both IDNR and IMPC have established protocols for how they feel about spraying around state nature preserves with buffer zones and things like that. Bull Valley has a number of those sites. I believe most of them are privately owned, but the same set of rules would apply. So I think those are all perhaps interesting and valuable pieces of information while you go through the debate about that.
Maybe something I don't understand about. So the state of Illinois was spraying as this invasion was moving across. What year was that? I mean, was that part of the 2008 thing or?
No, that was earlier. We were in the spread line, mid-2000s. By 2009, 2010, when the county had a program, we were already east of the spread line. And,
okay.
I believe it's out west of Rockford.
Yeah.
It's out west of Rockford? It's still in Illinois though?
Still in Illinois, yes.
Okay. I didn't, for some reason I was thinking it was further when we were getting the presentation.
It is further. I mean, I know that they're monitoring, I think even as far as Joe Davies County, the line. So but they monitor a wide swath because they're so in the spread. And it's just not Illinois. I mean, it's Wisconsin, it's Minnesota.
Well, I remember the Wisconsin thing.
And it's not a straight line.
No.
They like to move around.
Yeah, there's a website, I could put it up, but it's called, if you Google Slow the Spread program, all that information will be available, including data in the Moth counts in McHenry County as well as everywhere. I don't want to take the committee's time, but you've seen that before, you can look at that on your own. But we're just looking at what do we do within the county's limits. Ed mentioned something too that we need to be mindful of is, and I conclude your discussion document from last month with the question of, will the population crash in 2024? And there's two things to consider. When we look back at the trend, at the population data, so 2009, 2010, the county had a spike. 2010, you hit the apex. 2011, it crashed. Now, what caused that crash, I don't know, but it went from very high numbers to very low numbers. And it stayed low up until recently, up until about 2020, 2021, where it started to explode again. So that begs the question, that's a trend. Is 2023 an apex of the population? Did we reach that high point like we did in 2010, and will 2024 mean a crash? The other thing, and I'm probably going to butcher it as well, is there's a naturally occurring bacteria called Entomophaga mymaja, which is in that document, and it is naturally occurring in McHenry County. And if you have a warm, wet spring, it really allows that fungus to proliferate, and it's worse than it's very deadly, very fatal to spongy moths in particular, and especially when you have high populations, it's very effective to wipe those out. Ed's correct. There's a very specific death pattern, and I think there's one disease where they hang in a V, like if you see a spongy moth just dead, both sides are clipped to the tree and it's hanging. The other one, the back legs are still attached, but it's hanging down. I think it's.
And those are the ones we went to find.
Scott went to a seminar on this.
Yeah,
and he brought back great information. But it's still controversial.
Yeah, but the whole point, and we don't know and what this spring's going to hold. And so is that, if you want to do a program, you need to move, or you can take that risk. And so there's a few things to consider. And once again, 2024, we'll know in a year what that population was like.
And that map was created last year. We had Illinois Ag, Kathy Johnson. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
And we gave out traps, just for their information, traps to citizens, put them out, reported them, and that's how that map got created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Carolyn, did you have something?
No, I just was gonna, to kind of build on the discussion, I was gonna ask that, Ed, if you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit more about oak recovery, because I think in the last meeting, the only thing that I was holding out for was the one piece, and I tried to reach out, and then you guys were having your discussion, and I think we normally meet on Tuesdays, which is what you weren't aware that we were meeting on Mondays that month, could you just talk about the oak tree recovery and why, given how important oaks are, because oftentimes people will say, well, this is our old oak growth, we need to protect it, and at some point the feeling is it's a habitat, or the collateral damage maybe isn't as important because now you're gonna save this oak. And we know that trees go through life cycles and there's reasons why some trees are more susceptible to others. It is a boom and bust cycle with these kinds of things. Can you just talk a little bit more about the health of trees and their ability to recover?
I will certainly be happy to talk about that. The study that Elizabeth referenced was the first of its kind in the country. The district did it in 2005, and we tracked the distribution of oaks from 1837 to 2005. It was updated in 2023. And we basically found the distribution of oaks at the time of settlement and then tracked their loss over time. And we're able to do that because McHenry County is fortunate in having very accurate series of maps that go at intervals. 1837, the Public Land Survey, 1872, which is one of the most excellent maps ever produced of forest cover in northern Illinois, and McHenry County happens to have it. 1939 air photos, and then so on through the air photos. So we have a very good handle on the amount that was here and what happened to it through that period of time. The trees that we possess today, the mature oaks, are senior citizens. The majority of them are well over 200 years old, some 300, some 400. Oaks are very long-lived, but they're not eternal. So the cadre of mature oaks that we have now is on its way out over the next 50 to 75 years. So the district has taken a whole ecosystem approach, along with a lot of partners in McHenry County, the Land Conservancy, private individuals, the Morton Arboretum, in that we try to protect and preserve the entire oak ecosystem that is existing here. That's the mature oaks, but it's also the entire array of life that depends on that. One oak tree alone will support 58 different kinds of weevils. Not that anyone's really interested in weevils, but it's a good fact, shows you that that ecosystem is more than just the tree itself. When the tree dies, it supports a huge cadre of life that is dependent on that dead tree. So we've looked to try to bring back oak ecosystems with the missing generations that are not there. We've had very little oak reproduction over the last 100 years. So the district and the partners have gone a long way towards replanting forests. And that's what the Big Woods is about. So we're dealing with climate, we're dealing with invasive species, and we're dealing with old age affecting our oak groves. So to try to temper those impacts, we do reforestation, we do land management, and we try to ensure there's another generation going on. So we will lose trees to gypsy moth, there's no question about it. Many of those trees are not healthy. They're old, they're in the last stage of their life, and they've gone through some pretty heavy impacts, whether that's invasive species, whether it's overgrazing. There's a lot that's happened to those oaks over the past 150 years. So it kind of gives you a nutshell where those systems are. That isn't to say that spraying an individual tree is not an option, it always is. Or spraying a small block of trees somewhere. What occurs on private property is really between the landowner and what the landowner wants to do with those oaks. But remember that the district sites are not just a reservoir for oaks, they're a reservoir for everything that lives on them. So we have a very different approach to whole ecosystem management as opposed to how we look at an individual tree. I hope that's helpful.
Larry,
Yeah, go ahead, Lou.
So I was really pro-spraying projects at our last meeting. I would have loved to have had this information much sooner, and I'm kind of curious that we didn't have this conversation early on in our discussion of spongy moth, because I think it could have made a difference in the amount of time and staff time that we used. It feels pretty clear to me that the county choosing to spray on private property is, that seems like a policy decision. Do we spray on private property, even when municipalities might not want us to? That, I would not be in favor of spraying, but I would be in favor of examining the larger questions because they're a conservation district. So that is my comment.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
You said you treat individual trees if you have a problem, possibly.
It depends on the size of the problem. Right, but you can certainly treat individual trees or blocks of trees.
One of those giant trees, how do you treat that? How would you treat that?
I think that's really a question for the folks who do that. I don't treat trees, so I'm not as familiar with the methodology. I do know that ground treating has been done on some trees. I don't know if you're aware of some of their techniques. But the problem with aerial spraying is you try to be as accurate as you can, but you're hitting a very, very large area.
Right, and I know one of the presentations from one of the residents over toward Marengo was they tried to spray with booms and everything. Of course, those trees, they can't reach the tops of them. And then we need somebody to invent the same way our transportation, we invented the beet juice in that. We need someone to invent a
drone?
A extension boom to go up the base of that tree and then just spray over the top of it.
I thought you were gonna say.
I think our conservation district should see that, put that invention and make themselves worldwide known.
Some of the younger conservation district members should probably do that.
But I'm saying that you could literally put a boom up, like a hose extending boom up to above that canopy of that tree, that individual tree possibly.
Yeah, there are also other treatments you can do on individual trees as opposed to just spraying. If you can treat the egg cases with like a mineral oil in the winter, they won't hatch. When the young hatch out, if you attach burlap around the bottom of the tree, when they're very young, there's a period of time when they'll come downward at night to avoid predation, and they get caught in the burlap. You just pick them off like you would, beetles in your garden and throw them in a can of water.
I've seen some presentations where there were zillions of them.
Yeah, but this fungus, is there any, on this fungus, that's interesting. Is there any unintended consequences of that fungus spreading out to other species?
Right, as far as we know, it's not specific to gypsy moth, but most native species have developed a tolerance to it over the years because it's a naturally occurring.
So we don't kill possibly all the other caterpillars.
Right, exactly.
But that fungus we're introducing.
And again, it is established in McHenry County, so it's here. And we think climate may be directly, individual climate in a given year may be directly related to outbreaks. Particular weather patterns, and Cindy, you've done a little work on this, right?
Well, that cold period we had during January 14th and 15th, when the wind chills were 30 below and 40 below, that's definitely going to have an impact on some of all insects that aren't insulated under snow and stuff. Now, will that be enough to kill these hot spots? And who's to say? But cold weather like that definitely has an impact on insects.
And predatory, there are predatory wasps that will kill the insect. There's also a number of forest birds that depend on caterpillars. And what you'll typically see is if you have an outbreak of one species, in this case a caterpillar, the things that eat it will increase, but at a rate behind the first increase. So you'll have an increase in caterpillars followed by maybe a year or two later with an increase in the predators because there's more food available. And then as the population of the caterpillars drops down, a couple of years later, you see the population of the predatory species drop down. So you see these wave cycles that go with all predator-prey relationships, and this is just a microcosm of one.
Can I also point out too, when we talked about the fact that this was happening, in 2010, or we had that spray period then, and we talk about, we have the cycle, it kind of booms, they have the infestation, then it busts and we kind of level out for a while. In the meantime, a couple of things have happened to make it even more problematic in spraying now than it was 10 years ago, correct? So we have, I don't remember when it happened, but we had the pollinator collapse. So so more of these other Lepidoptera.
Good job.
I was Thura for a while, but I think it's Tura. That also rely on these species. Because that collapse is there, they're even more vulnerable. And we also know that I think in your report, you talk about the different birds that over time are becoming more endangered. Our bat population has plummeted, and they rely So not only just on the caterpillars, but once they become moths, these birds and bats are relying on that food for survival as well. So things have changed in the last 10 years, making this even more problematic. But is that fair?
I think that's well spoken, and they're going to continue to kind of evolve, right? This is a constantly changing, like I said, new invasives coming in, doing the best we can to sustain this art and these spaces so that we can do our best.
And the good news is that in a lot of district sites, we've seen dramatic increases in butterfly, moth populations, bird populations, as management has taken hold as we've restored areas. So really, you know, populations in some sites are better than they were 10 years ago because of the management. But it is all strung together.
I'd like to say something. These sites are critical for those declining populations. If we don't provide that refuge for these populations that are really in trouble, what's going to happen to them? We need to protect these areas.
Yeah. And so, and then the other point about this is if we do spray on these, do this targeted spraying, actually, because this has been going on, this is potentially year 3, which is normally the time that this collapses. So we don't even know if we spray this time around, that it actually would have just been down anyway. We don't, it's hard to judge that. So we have no way, we could spray and not really know if that was money well spent.
Well,
and the only other,
I mean, to interrupt that, but on that point, I think the idea was we would gather the data right before we made the decision to spray. Though even if we had a spraying plan, we wouldn't necessarily go through with it if the data didn't prove out.
Okay.
But what about the next private owner that comes to us and wants us to spray their trees? And the private owner after that are we setting a policy that we're going to commit to doing this individual spraying on private property whenever? I mean, how does that affect our future spending?
That is our discussion today. That is our discussion today, Lou, and we're trying to reach that point of where we can give some type of consensus and direction to staff.
but I want to just, if I could stay on track with the environmental impact, because I think this is part of the decision. I think the money is going to be the other part of the decision. But I'm also understanding that even if we spray on these isolated spots, it will do nothing to stop the spread on the next spot over or the next spot over. It is here. It is not going to change what is going to happen on any other piece of property within the county. The Department of Agriculture is no longer spraying. They're no longer spending their money spraying in McHenry County because it's not worthwhile. It's not going to change anything. It will change for that particular property owner. And I do understand, I mean, those pictures were horrific. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of the broader benefit, I'm not hearing that spraying on this property is going to change what happens over here. And I just want to make sure that that's true. Am I right on that?
That's my understanding.
So the way to approach it, and we're not looking at individual properties. A treatment block you want at
No, I
about 10 acres, right?
I understand that. I'm talking, even in this big block, it's not going to change anything over here.
That's, you're suppressing the population for a year by treatment.
On that
in the treatment.
In that block, in the block.
And I know they're big blocks, but they're,
What it does, and the thought process is you're providing relief for, let's say, those oak trees, but there's other trees that are affected by spongy moths as well. But let's talk about the oak. You're providing a relief for 1 year if you catch them in time so they don't get defoliated. Oak trees can go 2 to 3 years, actually 2 years, but defoliation, both years, and still survive, unless there's other stressors such as drought or maybe age or just general health of the tree. But they can take defoliation, and sometimes if it happens early, they leaf out, spongy moths are early, oak trees can re-leaf or rebud during that season, so they could sustain themselves. What you're doing with this part is you're finding those hot spots, you're suppressing it, you're providing relief for those trees for a year. Hopefully the population gets knocked down. Eventually it's going to come back, and that all you're doing is just suppressing for a short period of time.
Pam, I see your hand, but John wanted to talk first.
I'll defer to the committee.
I know you're new at this legislation stuff. Catch the eye of the chairman.
Wait for her.
Stick with me for more tips, Pam.
I know I said it at the wrong end of the ticket, sorry.
Okay.
Wow.
John, did you have something?
And don't kick me for that.
Well, just two things, you know, one is, you know, the predators, right? This is year 3, the predators may be on a climb up now, so maybe this will all be mute because your predators will be, you know, those wasps you're talking about?
Wasps and birds.
I've seen those wasps. That's wild how they'll take one, put them in half. But also, what interests me too is your reforestation. Do you have nurseries or do you just buy whips? What do you do to reforest? And how available is that for some of these oak owners that really do want to maintain, you know, the savannas to reforest?
We do not have a nursery program. We have what's called a Big Woods Project. And individuals are able to donate funds, and we go.
Any individual can donate to funds.
Yeah, right.
We tend to stick with trees that are in the 3-foot range in 5-gallon pots, and most of them are planted by the public during October. So what we'll do is we'll take October.
You can come and participate.
Where do we get those?
You can buy them at a number of nurseries, and we can certainly supply that information to the board to distribute more widely. But there are several in McHenry County. Some they're about $15 or $20 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So you,
I think the reforestation thing is a great subject, but that's really not where we're at right now.
Well, it kind of is though, Larry.
Where we're at right now is.
Do we spray or do we help them reforest? What's the better use?
Well,
because I think it is part of the conversation, because that's another remedy.
We need to give direction to staff as to whether we're gonna go out and look for the infestations, and if we don't have a spraying plan in place, if we're not gonna spray, we don't need to give staff direction to go look for these things.
True.
Absolutely.
Don't need stuff for that though.
But, so that's where we need to get to today, because it is time critical. So, sorry to interrupt on the reforestation, John, I think it's a good subject.
And agree to disagree, but no problem, I don't mind the interruption.
That's okay. Let's see, Pam?
I was just gonna say, I'm listening to all the conversation, and it seems to me, it is about both. It's about the environment and about money, and it's a balance. What's the best use of our funds, but what's the harm and the positive that we're garnering if we spray? And I mean, I'm just opining, listening to my friends at the Conservation District. I just think at this particular time where we are, I wouldn't go forward. I would just say we've investigated, we've done our due diligence, but it's just not worth the expenditure for something that we don't think is going to have a long-term benefit for a lot of people. That would be my outside opinion to share with you, and I'm not on this committee, so I don't get to vote.
Okay, no, but I appreciate you being here and expressing your opinion, and I believe Teresa wanted to express her opinion.
Sure, I mean, it's very similar to Pam's. I mean, last month when you guys had this discussion, I was listening to it, I thought to myself, you're gonna have a hard time getting a full block to agree to this for the environmental reason, right? And so I really appreciated all the work and sending you to the Spongy Moth camp, I guess is what we're calling it.
Let's call it that, yeah.
And listening to the homeowners who came in here last year talking about how it was horrific to me, seeing the evidence that they brought in and talking about their experiences. It's not something, I don't envy their experience. I have my own other infestations I've had to deal with that are not spongy moth, that it's difficult. But ultimately, we cannot end their suffering on this because spongy moths are going to come back. And I don't think that it's feasible for us to actually get full blocks to agree to do this. And I don't think that it's going to benefit the county and would more likely have a very negative impact in harming the species that we want to flourish. So I would not agree to put funds into this. I think hopefully we can share the resources of what we found that maybe could be more helpful so that homeowners and constituents can look at what the fungus is and the reforesting, right? So giving them resources of how they can address it for their properties, but I don't think we should put funds to it.
Yeah, I appreciate you looking into it, Teresa, and expressing your opinion here. Anyone else wanna, Carl, I'm sorry, I did forget you.
No problem. Two quick things. One, Pam, I'll be right there with you in October, help you plan some.
Pick you up.
Ms. Mesh is right. I don't think we need to be spending money, but Mr. Hartman, if I go back, I remember you said that we had some properties that were sprayed. Was that last year or the year before? And have we gotten any data back? Did it do any good? If it was last year, fine, it's a wash, we won't know. But if it was 2 years, this would be the third. But if they're reinfested, that proves we shouldn't be spending the money.
So the properties were, the group of homeowners just northeast of Marengo. They've approached the committee and addressed their concerns. They took it upon themselves to do treatment. I believe it was spraying. They had several properties, about 25 properties together. Whether it worked or not, that's to be determined. What we need to do now is take a look at whether you see egg masses on the trees. If you see the egg masses, then you know that the moths were there and they were able to lay eggs, and they're going to be there again this year. I don't know when they did the spraying. I don't know, if they got the timing right. There's a lot of variables that go into it, but that verification as to whether or not their egg mass is present will determine whether or not their spraying was effective. So just on the screen, this is it's a website from the DNR. Like I said, Department of Agriculture. There's a tremendous amount of Spongy Moth information out there for anybody who's interested. Anything about BTK, which is the spray, it's all well established. And but this is a picture of what Spongy Moth egg sacs look like, the egg masses. And these are several of them. And if you see those, well, that's bad. That means there could be spongy moths. And this is what we would need to look for in the next month or so to determine whether or not there's spongy moths present and we should treat. But if you see those, and you can see those not just on trees, on your firewood, on your patio furniture, on your car, as we mentioned, a visiting car came in and brought, wherever the female is, when it's ready to lay the eggs, it's going to lay the eggs. So if you see something that looks like that, it's a spongy moth, egg mass.
I guess it was a wood panel car.
So,
a Woody.
We haven't heard from Joe or Jim if they want to weigh in before this is over with, or?
I know before I was interested in doing this if I had partners, and from what I'm hearing, Bow Valley won't be a partner. MCC has got their own path, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of partners. And I do agree from what we're being told. I have no counter evidence of it that this is a patchwork fix. It's not a solution to the problem.
Okay. Thank you. Jim, did you?
Okay, I'll give my opinion.
Thank you.
I was. No, don't. I agree 3 times now.
Oh my goodness.
Are you keeping count?
We're keeping track.
I am keeping track with her. I agreed 3 times now. Hear that? If she's still with us. I agree 3 times with her. And rather than spend the money on this project, since we don't seem to have the partners who would be interested in it, I would rather spend any money we would put in this project on our last presentation with the mapping of the tiles and everything. That's where I'd rather spend money that we have limited amounts of.
Okay, thank you. John, I didn't mean to cut you off about the reforestation thing, but I didn't want to get too deep into it.
We're totally good. We're totally good. I mean, and that's
something more you'd want to put into
or
this part of it?
Not at all, but I think it's moving forward. It might be helpful to get that information out there, and another doohickey for Greg to put on our site. I mean, if you're concerned about reforestation, this is the place to do it.
Right, I mean, on that note, I would try it as what, it's hard to not put your report, but put all the information that we have gathered onto this
right? I mean,
site,
we have
so
a
that
perfect
there's
site
access,
Nature-based solutions, right?
But we have not wasted staff's time on this. I'll have to say, Scott did a tremendous job in research that we could come to this
Well, we put a lot of staff time in it, Scott.
We did, and but I don't consider it a waste of our time.
Okay.
It's been done.
That's a good way to put it. But
I
there was money invested to get to this point.
Right.
So,
And also, could I just add on, and our partners at MCCD, really, I mean, we work really well together, I appreciate their input,
thank
so.
so I've really getting a negative feeling about moving forward, even with the data collection from this point. Is there anyone that would disagree with that statement?
I think you still ought to collect the data, at least if nothing else, a year from now, you can say, did it crash or not?
Okay, I could agree with that point.
I mean, I don't want to be in the spot where we were in a year ago where we didn't know what we had.
So,
Especially on the ones who sprayed.
Scott, yeah, on the ones we sprayed too. Is it feasible, financially feasible to collect the data? If we don't have a spraying plan in place, would we spend the time and efforts to collect the data this year? If that's feasible, go ahead.
If I may, I would strongly recommend we continue collecting the data. We can work with Department of Agriculture, our citizen scientists, just to monitor that. Our conservation district partners put out a lot of traps. That's something that should be ongoing, and I think the point's well made. So we know, and did it crash or where are we at? But just to understand where the spongy moth population is. So I would highly recommend it. There was no cost to the county, except for, there was no cost to the county of the traps. And the Department of Agriculture was on the front end of receiving that data and compiling it, which is helpful to them as well. So, yeah, happy to continue this and work out with our citizen scientists and our conservation district partners to continue it.
Okay, that sounds like a good direction, and I think I'm seeing some heads shaking, yeah, and collecting the data then and going ahead.
If you could put a plug on your website somewhere, hey, these traps will be available, contact so-and-so, they'll give them or collect them here, or, however that works. Because I remember there were some high spots in Johnsburg too.
There were, and there's nothing. Well, let me build on that, and if it would please the committee, we should do kind of like a small campaign and some small public service announcements to do a couple things. Number one, talk about the availability of oak trees for reforestation. I think that's important. Talk about the data collection and that we're monitoring this population. But more importantly, talk about, the importance of checking anything that you move from your property to somewhere else for spongy moth, because that's something that's overlooked. The biggest culprit is firewood, and when you buy firewood and you move it from your friend's house across the county, just public service announcements, just making it awareness. I think that, as it's something that
there's many places it's against the law to move firewood. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to break my own rules here, and Mr. Vanderspoel has been such a big part of this over the last year, and I know he's got a level of disappointment from hearing it, but if you wanted to weigh in, I don't necessarily mean one last time, Mr. Vanderspoel, but if you wanted to speak, you'd be welcome to.
I guess I'll just say I'm disappointed.
Well, I certainly
I had a discussion with the conservation folks, and again, we're understanding that I have trees surrounding my house. If they get clobbered, that's a big impact. But the only thing I could spray was around the house. I got 3 acres of oak. They can't get to it because they can't get down at the bottom, and there's no open space to spray up. So it was a limited protection that I used. If they get clobbered and killed, I took down a 205-year-old oak from old age. I've seen that too. I don't want to lose those trees. They've been around hundreds of years. You can see them on the 18 whatever maps, the aerial views. So
I don't think there's
for the discussion.
I don't think there's anyone here that isn't sympathetic to your situation and appreciative of all the information that you've brought in over the last year. But I also think we have a consensus on how we're gonna move forward with this, and it's gonna be to collect the data and not have a plan for spraying this year. So,
Thanks for the offer.
okay, thank you for all your input on this. So, anyone else have anything else on this? Thank you, Conservation District, and all
Ed, that was just
information.
awesome, that information, thank you.
Yeah, we'll get you the stuff on the oak tree.
Scott, you good on the directions?
Crystal clear, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Renee?
Ready?
I would be ready, please.
October, I'll help you.
This is gonna be pretty quick, it looks like, right?
Yes. Zoning for this month.
Thanks for coming in, ma'am.
There's only 3 petitions, and I don't believe there's any controversy. So the first one is Raven. That's a very small landscape business that came to us as a complaint. It was a violation. He has some outdoor storage. This is his personal residence. He keeps it neat. So that one is recommended for approval for a CUP for outdoor storage of landscape equipment and materials. And then the next one, Wagner. That one's interesting. This is a disconnection from Lakemore. So this is something, as a policy nerd, I haven't thought about, but we might be seeing more and more of, is usually when there is an incorporation, there's an annexation agreement that runs for like 20 years. Well, we all know what happened approaching 20 years ago. So we're starting to see these annexation agreements expire. So we might see more disconnections come up from time to time. So if you disconnect from the incorporated areas, then you get default zoning, which is A1. So this couple had bought this property. They didn't like what they heard from Lakemore, just decided, oh, we'll disconnect and build in the county. So then they came to us to build, and we're like, well, now you're A1, you don't have 40 acres, so you have to get rezoning. So that's what this petition is all about. So there was some opposition to this from the neighborhood to the south, but we haven't heard anything since the hearing. I think it was more people were concerned that another subdivision was getting built, that it wasn't just a single lot. So also, because in the past, usually when you see A1 to E5 on a vacant property, you'll see a recommendation against from the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's been the last several. This one, there's a recommendation for, because the 2030 plan shows this area as residential or estate. So it's completely in compliance with your comprehensive plan. So that's why there's a recommendation to move forward. The variation on that is just on the frontage because they aren't on a public street. And then the last one is a simple variation. Couple put in the slab for a detached garage in the front yard without coming and asking us first, and they got a little too close to the street. So they had to go and ask for variation for that. So the hearing officer has recommended approval, and that's it. You might hear something on the Wagner one from those people in that subdivision, but that would be the only thing I would expect to not hear.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
You're failing, Adam.
They're
Adam,
coming.
Adam, you got anything you want to put in today?
No, we absorbed a lot.
Okay.
What?
No Spongy Moth,
No.
Future topics, we're going to keep the drainage title conversation alive, but we're just sort of letting it sit right now until GIS decides if they're going to want to make something live. So no executive session. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Carl, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.